Well, welcome to the Moringa for Life Ambassador Level online course. I am really pleased to be able to present this to you. My name is Mariko Gifford. I have been working with Moringa for the past 22 years, and I am sharing now all of that wisdom and experience for people who are interested in working with Moringa at many different levels. So whether it be you want to be a grower or an educator, or you are a consumer and you want to know more about this incredible plant, or you just want to be an advocate, you want to go to your local communities and government agencies and promote Moringa. This information gives you that groundwork, that foundation, and it also ensures that the things that you're saying are correct and they're allowed according to your regulating agencies. So very important for us to play by the rules, but also to expand and know that this information is available to all, and that it's our goal to have this be available and accessible to as many people as possible. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. This is really a beautiful plant and very simple, very non-assuming leaf pattern. You wouldn't think that this had the power that it does, but these leaves could save millions of lives just based on the amount of nutrition, vitamins, minerals, amino acids that this tree has packed inside these tiny leaves. Moringa oleifera is the most common variety, and that's the one that we work with specifically. This is a variety native to India. It's native there, and it was first described there as early as 2000 BC in their medicinal system, which is Ayurvedic. It's one of the oldest healthcare systems in the world, and it is stated there to have a cure for over 300 diseases and illnesses. Moringa trees spread across eastward from India to the lower parts of China, Southeast Asia, the Philippines. In the Philippines, it's a cultural food, even today. From India, it also spread westward to Egypt, the Horn of Africa, around the Mediterranean, and finally to the West Indies and America. It adapted and changed due to its new environments, creating the 13 varieties that we have today. Right here where this little circle just appeared, that is where it's believed that Moringa began. It originated there in the Himalayas above India. This is where it is suspected that it traveled from into these areas. So if you imagine that at that time, people were walking everywhere. They were carrying only the most important things. And because we know that Moringa spread to all of these areas, we know that the ancient people consider this to be one of the most important plants to have with them. And so they carried it to all of these places. In ancient times, it was used for many things, aside from drinking tea from the leaf all day and eating the leaves and pods as food all over the Indian subcontinent, Southwest Africa, and many parts of Asia. The Romans, Greeks, and Egyptians extracted edible oil from the seeds and used it as perfume and skin lotion. In the 19th century, plantations of Moringa in the West Indies exported the oil to Europe for perfumes and lubricants for machinery. In fact, the Swiss use it in their clockworks because it does not go rancid. It has been found in tombs and pyramids in Egypt as well. We actually went to Jamaica, hearing from one of our tenants that he had Moringa on his family property. So my husband and I went to Jamaica in search of it. We flew into the south part, Montego Bay, and we went to his property. His father greeted us and hosted us. And he took us to these trees on the property. It was about 120 acres. And he said, here are the Moringa trees. But actually it was some other tree that looked really similar. It had the long dark pods, although they were more square. Moringa is triangular. And he said, here they are. And we're like, oh my gosh, we traveled all this distance to Jamaica and this is not Moringa. So we did spend time. He drove us to all different places. He went into the bush and met with different medicine men and asked, "Where's Moringa?" And they would tell us, and we'd go there, and there'd be like a single Moringa tree. Now we knew that in Jamaica they had about 200 years ago they had an oil business, exporting Moringa oil, and when the whale oil came onto the market, it completely knocked that out. And so those years went by, and people lost the connection and the use of Moringa. And so we were gonna, we thought we could reignite that, but it was difficult to find Moringa trees. And when we finally just decided, well, maybe they're just in another part of Jamaica, we stayed in a hotel, and the driver, we arranged for a driver, and the next day he picked us up. We started to just drive around, that area of Montego Bay. And we said, oh, suddenly I saw Moringa trees on the side of the road. I said, stop, look at, these are Moringa trees. And they were. And then we stayed at another place further up in the town, and we just walked around the town. We saw Moringa trees planted just, here and there. And then my husband opened what looked like kind of a secret garden gate, and inside were huge Moringa trees that he could climb up inside. And there was this whole like nursery filled with, this Moringa trees. This huge planted area. They just had fallen from that mother tree and started to grow. So there's all different sizes of Moringa trees right there. And we started to collect seed and hand it out to people and talk to people about Moringa. And years later, we did find that somebody wrote an article in that same month of April saying, oh, we had some people visit, and we started to find out all about Moringa, and it's this amazing thing. And so now, the West Indies University there has done a study, and, they're getting it really into their world again. So it was quite an amazing journey there. This is an image that you see a lot on the internet, and I include this here, and I have a disclaimer about it. So this looks like this little branch of Moringa has enormous benefits, we know that, but that it's saying that this little bit is equal to 7 times the amount of vitamin C in oranges, and 4 times, this whole chart. What isn't here is the actual amount that is measured. So whenever you see any measurement of vitamin, mineral, or amino acids from food, it's based on the standard of 100 grams of edible portion. So that means not the rind of the orange or the tops of the carrots. And so what I have, this slide I made, is to show what 100 grams of Moringa looks like. And it's fresh compared to fresh, and it's gram for gram. So if you weighed out 100 grams of oranges, an orange without the peel, and Moringa, this amount of Moringa, then this amount of Moringa would have 7 times the vitamin C. So I show that because it's really important to know that on the internet, there's a lot of information about Moringa. I've looked and seen a lot of misinformation, and also things that are actually not even true. So it's my goal in this course to give you the accurate information so that you are not continuing to spread any of that misinformation, and to have you also gain some discernment when you see these kinds of things. What is it actually saying, and are you understanding what the meaning is? So this is 100 grams of fresh edible portion. And now you can see that it's quite a different amount that you would have to eat, a larger amount you'd have to eat in order to get that 7 times the vitamin C of oranges and so forth. I really love this visual. It shows that Moringa, in the shadow of all these other vitamins and minerals and tablets, contain a lot of what you might be already taking as a supplement. And it can be replaced. This is a live plant, especially if you process it as we do, which is to dry it under 120 degrees, which means it retains its classification as a raw food. So you can eat a raw food and have this vitamin mineral content. Moringa is packed with nutrition, especially for babies and young children. It contains all 9 essential amino acids that we have to get from food. And this is very rare to find in a single plant. Normally there's 4 or 5 plants eaten together would get you those 9 essential amino acids. We also produce amino acids in our own bodies, but there are 9 ones that we have to get from food. So it's very important for building healthy bodies. It also contains histidine and arginine, which are 2 amino acids that are really important for infants. And that's why there's so many programs for nursing and pregnant women and children up to the age of 3. This is a sensitive time when the infant mortality rate is high during that age group. This is Lo Fugli. He wrote the book Moringa the Miracle Tree and really brought the attention of Moringa out into the Western world in the mid-1990s. He had a clinic in Senegal, and he taught them how to grow Moringa, and they grew it there, and they also gave it to people. This is Church World Service is where he worked for, and it was in collaboration with his Alternative Action for African Development. I always include him in my talks because I always want to acknowledge the contribution he made to this whole worldwide Moringa movement. He has passed away now, and I was fortunate enough to be in contact with him the last year of his life. He's a Canadian. He had gone back home. He was born with a heart illness and knew that he wouldn't live long. And so he dedicated his life to helping people. And I really acknowledge him. I was supplying him with Moringa in the last year of his life, and really proud to do so. So Lo Fugli is one of my heroes, one of the Moringa pioneers. This is one of the women and babies in that study that he did in that clinic. And early on, I saw a video of her and the baby, and they were being walked up to the examination table. She could hardly walk. The baby they'd already done the skin test, and they were on a death watch. And it was amazing to see. This is I think 4 months later, maybe it's 3 months later, and she's thriving, and the baby is extremely healthy. And so he gathered a lot of data, and it's in his book there. It's out of print now, but sometimes you can find it. Children maintained or increased weight and improved health. Pregnant women recovered from anemia and had babies with higher birth weights, which meant more likely to survive. So another part of his work was just, bringing this to the people, and they were thriving with it. Here, this is the vitamin, mineral content, and you can see that it's fresh leaf and dried leaf. So when you dry moringa, it becomes concentrated. You take the water out, and so now by weight, when you compare things, you're going to see that there's a much higher amount of concentration in the dried compared to the fresh. What the fresh has is the enzymes, which you lose in the drying process. So you can see iron is extremely high, banana, the potassium, the protein. What you do lose is vitamin C. So in the fresh, you can see that you have that high amount of vitamin C, and compared to the orange, the vitamin C in oranges, but the dried leaf, you lose it because vitamin C is volatile, and so it evaporates. So that's the only one that it reduces in the drying process. There are common names all around the world. They include moringa, besides moringa, drumstick tree because of the long, slender pods that look like drumsticks, horseradish tree because the root tastes and smell like horseradish. It's spicy. And also in the high season of summer when we harvest, we taste that spiciness in the leaf as well. And sometimes if that has been harvested in the heat of the summer months or the high heat, you're going to taste that little bit of spice. So it also is interesting to note that the root is commonly used for low blood pressure and the leaf is commonly used for high blood pressure. So opposite ends of the tree have two different effects in the human body. So moringa is known as the miracle tree for all the medicinal uses and benefits. Never die is thought to come from the words never die, and that's across Africa. That's a common name that different African countries use for moringa. So it is the connection for good health and long life. And these are the different names. So you know that in all of these places, moringa traveled to these places and started to grow and changed in the way that it looked and how people were using it. The traditional uses vary greatly from country to country. But over the years, moringa has kind of receded out of use. And even when I was originally trying to find a high nutritious plant, and I found moringa, I looked in all the botanical books and herb books and trees of the world. It just was non-existent. So for some reason, for a long period of time, moringa has been in hiding or protecting itself, or I really don't know. And I've never been able to explain when people have asked, well, why have we never heard of it if it's just this amazing plant? Now in India, they've known it for a long time and they've used it for thousands of years. And their knowledge of it and their use of it is primarily the seed pod for chutneys. They haven't traditionally used the leaf. And so now it's kind of come full circle back as they've been the one who has been in a high production of moringa to export it, realize that they have a lot of their own people who are dying of malnutrition. And so now it's starting to be much more used in India for malnutrition and for adding to your daily nutrition using the leaf. There are 13 varieties. There's actually a 14th one that is extinct. And when I started out, I looked on the internet for any resources. There were 4 websites. They are all still there. One is echo.org. It's an educational organization. I've had a lot of contact with them. I supplied moringa to them in the early days in their bookstore. And they do an educational program there. There was the Trees for Life, and that's still there too. Baldor, he's retired now, but he's from India and he has an educational program with moringa and promoting moringa trees being planted. In fact, a lot of the slides I have are from him. They made an open source slideshow that you could download and use for educational purposes, as well as some other written materials. So he's been a really big promoter of moringa. He's in Wichita, Kansas. Then there was also Mark Olson, who was doing his dissertation on moringa at the time, and he was sponsored by National Geographic and given an ultralight plane to go to some remote places in search of these different varieties of moringa. And he was the one who identified that there was one that was extinct. He's still a big promoter of moringa. He is at the University of Mexico, Mexico City. And you'll see in different videos that are available online that he's being interviewed because he still is a big supporter of moringa. Then the other one was the Moringa Garden Club. And it was just a group of women. They're still there, I guess, still meeting. And they came upon the name and they really liked it. And they really don't have anything to do with moringa, but they like the name. And so that's the Moringa Garden Club. Now you can go and there's just hundreds of websites and products and everything. But when I started, there were 4 websites. There were no products at all. And no, no studies. Now you can go to pubmed.gov. It's on our resource page. And you can see many, many, many different research studies being done on moringa and a wide range of health issues and water treatment. And it's quite a miraculous thing to see in the past, maybe 7 years, I would say, 10 at the most, where it has come into much more mainstream. You can find moringa in a lot of health food stores now, actually. So This is from Mark Olson. These are the different varieties of moringa, and this map shows where they were predominantly located. There's a variety in Madagascar as well, the Dead Sea. There's actually a product from the Dead Sea now. It's been out a few years. So as time has gone on, more and more people have started to grow moringa. We focus on Moringa oleifera because it has a high amount of leaf production. The only other variety that I have experimented with is the Stenopatella. It is a really large leaf, and so that could be one that starts being produced. I had seed and I tried to grow it, and it was just very difficult. The 50 seeds that I had, two germinated, and neither one survived. So I went with the one that had the high life force, because I figured it has a high life force, it's going to give you that high life force. There's so many traditional uses of moringa all over the world. This is a started list, and as people use it more and more, we find more and more uses for it as people report back of the different illnesses they had and being helped by moringa. So here, the list goes on and on. You can see how many different uses it has. And this is the leaf that could be using the seed oil, the root, many different things. Also combining them together is also one of the ways. People are also starting to eat the seed. The seed has an outside hull like a sunflower, and that inside kernel is being eaten, and people are reporting different benefits from that. I have used actually the seed when I need to focus or concentrate or memorize. I find that I have more mental focus. So if you have moringa seeds, it might be good during this course to use it if sometimes you feel like you might be getting overwhelmed with information. I used it. I don't use it, eat it any later than 3 o'clock because it is high energy. And then I tend to like not be able to fall asleep when I want to. But, and then sometimes I've been doing so much because I'm highly energized that my energy drops a little bit in that, around 5 or 6, because I just expended so much energy during the day. Here are the different parts of the tree, and as you can see, they're all used for different things traditionally, and in different countries. Some have used the bark, some the gum, some have used erosion control as in the tropics. It's not in San Diego, and some of the places where there's a shorter season because it goes dormant. So, but in some areas they grow it for that purpose and also as windbreaks. You can see the leaf. The flower is used for many different things. We make a tea that's very calming for the central nervous system, and we market that. Traditionally we've been just using it for women. Calming women, especially at when you have a lot of children and you're dealing with a lot of different things that just kind of get your nerves going. It's very soothing. But we don't produce very much flower in San Diego. We have a shorter season than the tropics would have. So when we have it, we're usually harvesting it at the end of the season because we know that any seed pods that come from that flower will not produce seed pod because the season will be ending soon. So we do gather seed at that time. The flower sets for us around May and June. And then we know that seed pod will be viable, and then we'll leave it on during the winter and harvest the following spring. So you see the root also used for low blood pressure, but also as a food. The seed, as I just mentioned, the oil is used for everything to do with skin as well. It's very, very good for cuts and scrapes and wounds and to heal things also. Internally, when you have scar tissue, it's good for external scars as well. I've used when I've had burns or something, and then I can't find that place I had that burn scar. It's gone. So the bark is also reported to have a dye that you can make a dye that's a blue dye. And we did try that, and we came up with a yellow. It dyed some things, but it was a pale yellow. So maybe somebody will come up with how to extract that dye. All the parts are usable, as I said. Not all are medicinal. But there are some websites that say everything about moringa is medicinal, and I just haven't found that to be true. There could be a medicine from the bark. Haven't seen it. I haven't tried to extract anything from it. I just find that the leaf is the most powerful, the seed and the seed oil. And so that's what we focus on. And that leaf powder, when people have used it, even the fresh leaf, but mostly the leaf powder, because again, it's a concentrate, that people use that who have high blood pressure. Those are the common ones: high blood pressure, inflammation, diabetes, and liver issues. Those seem to be what people use it the most for. There are many, many other uses and benefits that people have. And for this, the seed oil, like I said, all issues to do with the skin. Many cultures also have used it for improving the quality of mother's milk and the quantity. And in fact, my daughter-in-law right now is taking the moringa for while she's pregnant, and especially when she starts to nurse, she used it for both of my two grandsons. My daughter also has used it extensively. It's very common in like the Philippines. The grandmother comes right away to the granddaughter who's having her first baby and brings her moringa. In some other places like Cambodia, it's also a cultural food. So just bringing that information to people. These pictures were made available to me by one of my students. A nursing group came to them, North Carolina, to take pictures with moringa. They were wanting to promote it to all of their whole community. How to add it to your diet. It's amazing food to add to anything that you're eating. It's a natural nutritional supplement, as the tea, both hot and cold, and into smoothies, a part of hydration. So you can take the dried leaf and add it to your water and drink it as your water throughout the day. As a snack for pets, my youngest daughter did a homeschool project with the dried leaf and the seed oil. We just got kibble and tossed it in oil and then tossed it in the leaf powder and gave it to pets. It's very nutritional for pets as well. The oil is very good for the skin when pets have any type of skin issues. These are just a lot of different foods and uses. On the bottom left, that's soap. I've made a lot of different kinds of soap drinks, there's protein molds, stir fry. So really anything that you can think of, you can probably put moringa into pasta. We've made truffles, pancake mix, pesto, pasta, dips, salsa, guacamole, bread, cookies, cakes. It's just really limited by your own imagination. And some people have a really good imagination and they have a lot of uses for moringa. During our courses in person, my younger son, Mitchell, would make the meal for the day. We served a fresh drink of fresh moringa with a little bit of honey and citrus or passion fruit or mint. And we would drink that throughout the day. And then at lunch, he made these fabulous meals with all different kinds of moringa ingredients in it. So you can try this yourself, adding moringa to anything that you want. The very first effect that people have is energy. That's what I experienced as well. It's a calm energy that gives you more endurance at the end of the day. You just don't feel tired as you might normally have. It's calming for the central nervous system. And you come to a very centered place. So it's really amazing to put it in food. This is one of the meals. There's like everything on that table. It has moringa in it in some way. Moringa in agriculture is really, I see a huge future for this plant. This is me standing by a moringa tree. This is a whole moringa field. It's about 6 acres out in the desert, clear near to where we live. And you can see that if I was trying to do a moringa business with a leaf, I'd have a hard time getting to that, the top of there. This is how moringa grows with a single trunk. This has a split trunk, and then this lacy canopy on the top. And so it's very difficult to harvest. This is from a project down in Nicaragua. Nikolai Feudal is an Austrian farm scientist, and he conducted quite a few experiments with moringa, broadcast growth of it. So you see this on the right. And then you can see he's harvesting, sections at a time. And as he harvests, it gets thicker and thicker. The more leaf comes, the more you harvest it. However, when it's close together like that, moringa is quite a polite plant, and it will slough off the leaf of any where it's touching another plant. And so even though there's a lot of moringa and it looks really lush, you actually don't have full production from each plant because it's sloughing off leaf where it's touching others. But this is in Nicaragua, is the perfect climate for it. It would never look like that in San Diego, might not look like that in your area. But this was a great experiment that he did of an intensive planting. He fed moringa. If you can see that he's feeding moringa, adding it to the fodder for these animals. And it increased the daily weight gain of up to 32%. And that would be for meat animals, and increase the milk production from 43 to 65%. This is without hormones or additives or antibiotics, just pure nutrition. I don't think that any other kind of input to animal feed can come to these same kinds of levels. Moringa is just an amazing thing to feed to animals. It has high nitrogen in the leaf. And so it's known as a plant growth enhancer, not a plant hormone, because there's no hormone in it. It's just high nitrogen. It's one of the inputs that we use in agriculture. So this is a recipe for the solution. And in the background, on the top picture, that's Nikolai Feudal. And you can dilute that, and you can use your modern, everyday equipment on a farm to spray that onto the leaf. So it's a foliar spray. And you can see that's actually Feudal down in that bottom picture, and he's spraying sugarcane. So this is quite an amazing thing. If you can imagine all the farm workers who are dressing up in hazmat suits to use, the different chemicals that they're using, they could actually drink that solution that they're spraying out there. So nothing harmful for the farm worker, nothing harmful for the plants or the soil or any animals that are in the vicinity. That's completely safe product. You also have to use it fresh, so it's not something that you can get commercially. So there's that limitation. You need to be growing it and using it fresh. It will go anaerobic. It will turn rotten, because you have to use that fresh. So the effects of the spray: it accelerated the growth of young plants. Plants were firmer, more resistant to pests and disease, had a longer lifespan, heavier roots, stems, and leaves, produced more fruit, larger fruit, and increased yields from 20 to 35%. Extremely high increase in yield. So really looking to see that farmers can replace that chemical that they're using and use this and create sustainable practices which will benefit us now and also future generations. There will not be any chemical in the soil to have to take out, bioremediate out of the soil. Moringa has high potential for water treatment, even in municipalities. It can be used to clarify water. So I want to make sure that you realize and to clarify that it's not purified. So most water is treated with harmful chemicals. One is alum, which comes from aluminum. And how moringa works is it's a coagulant. And you agitate the water, and then it will adhere to the particulates in the water and sink it to the bottom, right? And so then you can pour off that water. But you just have to make sure that you have that still tested, because there could still be pathogens. It could also need to be treated more than once. But this is a simple way to test it in water for your everyday use, to just take more of the impurities out of tap water. So it is a coagulant, as I stated. Has what's called a cation, and that's what creates that coagulant effect. And there's research in Penn State University, it's called killer sand, and they added sand to the filter, and that filter they found also killed E. coli. So there is a video in the resources that is about that. It's Penn State University. So big potential for using moringa for water treatment because more than 6 million children die each year from drinking contaminated water. A tree is estimated to have about 5,500 seeds per year, which would treat 7,000 liters of water. Seeds are 40% oiled by weight. So, and these are the weights of the seed and the kernel. So the very high possibility for more work to be done in this arena for government agencies to get involved. And in these areas where there's a high amount of contamination of water, you could have a lot of different types of water treatment going on, municipalities, and then have it treated again in the home. Products is a big arena that is growing more and more in the past 5 years. These are our products that we've had through the years. We've had sets, we've had different shakers that have herb blends, and we've used the seed powder as an antifungal. It's also used as a deodorant. The oil, the straight oil, a lip balm, a salve, leaf powder, just for putting in your foods and eating and making teas. So many things that you can make with moringa. And this industry is just growing by leaps and bounds, and it's really important that the customer also knows what quality moringa is all about, what it looks like and tastes like and smells like. Here are the graduates, some of the work that our graduates are doing around the world. This is Roberta Pippett. She's in Harare, Zimbabwe. This is where her project is. She lives in Denver, and she goes there twice a year, April and September. And she has been working in this little village for 20 some years, maybe 25 years now. You can hear the podcast with her that I did with her last year. She was turning 88 years old. She's just incredible. She is so dedicated and devoted to this project. And in the podcast, you'll hear that she has accomplished a lot. She has a processing room that they built. She has a drying unit. It was donated by the Rotary Club. She has implemented vermiculture, which we'll learn about later in the course. Composting was too difficult for her to do. They couldn't mulch. There's very few trees in that area. They were thinking to grow moringa in order to mulch moringa, so they'd have mulch for the moringa trees. But vermiculture was something they could implement, and so there's a room that houses these long vats that they feed, and there's the water from that rolls into the center. There's a channel. The channel has a pitch that it drains out of that room and into a container, and the women gather that and go and water the moringa trees with it. That has been really successful, and that's one way that they've been able to improve the soil biology. She has more than 100,000 moringa trees. I think about 20,000 are in seedlings still. But quite inspirational. If you want to listen to that podcast, I'll be also doing a second part to her podcast to get an update. This is somebody that in Zimbabwe, so this is just one story that she sends me journals every time she's there. And this is just a picture that was sent to her of this boy. She was already home by this time, 13-year-old boy who was brought to the center, who couldn't walk. And then after 1 month, you can see on the right, that's the same boy. So just many stories like this for over the years that she have had. That's just keeps her motivated. All the people, they see this as a total miracle because all the community people, the townspeople just knew that this child would not make it. This is Fatou Doumbia. Her project is in Mali. She had about 200 women who were wanting to grow moringa. And then Mali had a civil war. And so everything came to a stop. She had purchased land, 12 acres of land, and they built a fence around it and a guard tower. And then all this happened. And so instead, she just started to make these bags. This is one that I purchased on the bottom. They are the fabrics. Most of the other designs are their native fabrics that designs that have a cultural meaning for them. The name of the company is Jimmy Jama, that she's doing as a fundraiser for when they are ready to move forward in their project. That's actually the name of a tree in Mali that is a very resilient tree. Whenever there's any kind of weather event, that tree always survives, right? So they're raising money by, by selling these different handbags. This is Makeda Dredd, very dear friend of mine. I planted moringa in her botanical garden probably 20 years ago. And she's, you can see moringa on this very busy street down in San Diego at Balboa Park, our really large county park there. She's been a very big advocate for moringa, and they have a kitchen there and at the World Beat Center. So she's harvesting fresh, and she has dried, and she's just making food for people. Vegetarian food is her specialty. She had the very first vegetarian restaurant when she was like 18 years old, called The Prophet. So she has a lot of long years of experience with this. Very, very dear friend and long-term moringa advocate. This is Carol Davis, and she's in that top picture in the center. You could pick her out easily. And then David Osuchi, he came to the course. He's their field supervisor. And they worked with an orphanage and a learning center. And he came to find out, how to grow moringa. And their first field was taken over by termites. And they finally had to give it up. It was an acre, and they moved to another parcel of 2 acres, and they've had a different location. They've been much more successful there. But just a wealth of information about their local area and how to reach people. It's a very inspiring program that they're doing. This is Jasmine Jallet. She is now the largest distributor of moringa in the United States. She came to the course some years ago, one of the first courses. And she came to my office, just stopped by one afternoon with this gentleman, Ramesh. And he told me the story that I didn't realize that somebody else who I was dealing with was actually somebody in his office. So he was an engineer or maybe an architect in Wisconsin for many years and was very unhappy with his work and decided he had to find something else to do with his life. So he just got on the internet and started to research, and he found moringa. He's from India, and he's like, this is from my own country, and I need to go back home and grow this plant. And so he did. He went back, and I was the only one doing anything with moringa, and he would regularly contact me. Somebody else, Sharmila was the name on the email, and always wanting to send a sample, and they'd send a sample, and then I would have it tested and said, no, it has E. coli. No, it has too much mold. And so I found out later that it was his company, and he would come to her and say, has she bought any? Has she bought any? Always wait until when I was going to buy the moringa from him. So he was making all these improvements every time I would give him any feedback, the feedback of it. And so it was really neat to meet him and realize that he is the same company I've been dealing with without realizing it. And she represents him and brings his product in. And now she's had him have to test everything, test the soil, test the product. So she always has a lab test that accompanies the product that she sells. A very reliable company. I've just had nothing but wonderful things working with them. When I run short, I run to Jasmine. When anybody wants to sell moringa large quantities, I forward their information to her, and and then she vets out who's got good product and who doesn't. And So it's been quite a wonderful collaboration. And we also carry one of the products from her brother, which is Moringa and Baobab together. And that is a really powerful combination. Baobab is something where you get natural vitamin C. Like I said earlier, vitamin C is what disappears in the drying process, but with Baobab, it dries in the fruit on the tree. So you never lose any of that. It's a natural form of dried vitamin C. So you can add that vitamin C back in. Baobab is also a prebiotic, so really good for digestion and a lot of different benefits of it. So we carry their product rather than make another product. I always like to support my students, and so we carry that Moringa Baobab product. This is Dr. Mike Erdman. He came to the course and he wanted to bring this apparatus here on the bottom left there. He teaches engineering students a leadership program, and they make these different devices, engineered devices for farmers who are growing moringa. This is a greenhouse because on the right here in Pennsylvania, because it's cold in the winter. So they're keeping their trees warm there. They also have the water treatment research that was done at that university as well. So he got a lot of information. He went and came in November and went straight from our course to at the time he was going to the Gambia. So quite a big supporter of Moringa. I've helped some of his students in their Moringa projects when they've done PowerPoints and research and so forth. Here are some groups. This was actually our very first Moringa course. Here, this is Roberta, bottom kind of middle there. Fatu is on the far right, standing up right here. Makeda right there in the middle with holding the plant. So yeah, it's taken some years, and people sometimes, have to learn a lot of patience before they actually can get their project going. Some more of our groups here, and that top right is a lab that my husband built for me, and on this bottom is very bottom left is Blanca, and that's where we moved our demonstration farm to her farm. And so we've been doing our in-person course at her place. More groups. This is at the original property, and this was called, that upper right is the Moringa Healing Circle. And that's where we would congregate in the very beginning, and then we would congregate at the very end. And at any time, people could go up there and just sit amongst the moringa trees. The moringa trees lined the entire outside of that circle. And you could just sit in that circle and just receive information, inspiration, ideas. This is Bernard Singleton. So he was the one who provided these pictures of the nursing women's group. He is fundamental in Moringa. He's going to be a common household name, I would guess, soon. He's very much in the science of Moringa and testing everything. He's in North Carolina, and he has a land grant where he has started to build an education center. He is also somebody who will be working with the Black Farmers Association. So he's been going down to Florida and looking at different farms and farmers who want to start growing moringa. And there's about 4 different states who want to work with him in the association, and he's going to get all of them growing moringa. So some of those pictures of the moringa uses were from him. Everything he thinks of, he makes moringa out of it. He's done every kind of salve. He did the pancake mix. He's done soap and pasta, everything. He's done a wine. He's very similar to me. Like, I did the same. Everything I could think of, I wanted to make it with moringa, right? So it's been quite a joy to work with him and to see what will come from that work. This is Damayanti Lee. She's in Sri Lanka, and I've worked with her over the years. It was really amazing. This year, she was invited by the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture to do a presentation on moringa, which she did March 13th. And from that, they declared National Moringa Day for April 14th. And it really, really put Sri Lanka on the map. Every family, every household will get a moringa tree to be planted, and every year they will plant moringa trees on April 14th. And we have actually created a scholarship in her name that will be awarded on April 14th. It will be somebody who would get a scholarship into the ambassador course. And then once they were finished, they could choose to go on to the growers or the educator course after that. We also did a proclamation for Sri Lanka as being the pioneer first country really to set this as a standard for their people. And we really do hope that other countries follow in their footsteps. It is to create a better future for their country. And as we all start to really focus on moringa wherever we live, it will become something across the planet. And in my hope, it will create peace on earth. This is Aubrey Bonneau and Lubitsa Curie. He came to the course and he originally was going to do his project in Costa Rica. And then he changed and he was going to go to Mexico. And then this Category 5 hurricane hit Dominica, which is where his family is from, where he was born. And that's the place he needed to go. So he decided to go there. You can see on the bottom right, this the entire island was completely devastated. And they bought land and they started to clear it. There's so much debris everywhere. And he has this incredible permaculture planting there. You're going to see it in week 2. And he's also going to be teaching the permaculture section of the growers course. But in the week 2, when you go over permaculture, you'll see his farm. It's quite inspirational, and he is very committed to moringa for climate resiliency. So Dominica is one of the first islands that are hit when hurricane season starts. And so what we are interested in doing is finding ways to create what we call the moringa survival kits. So in these areas that we know these weather catastrophes are happening, they can predict when those hurricanes are happening. They could cut the moringa down to the ground, harvest it. They don't lose any of that harvest. Let the hurricane come, blow over the moringa, and moringa will come back bigger and stronger. And then they'll have that harvest and they'll be able to make those survival kits and bunker them right there so that when these things happen, people have food and medicine and ways to clarify water. This is Barbara Novick. She is head of and creator. She started Colorado Coalition for African Empowerment. Some of her people have come through the course. She has worked with 20 or 21 countries who are in this coalition, all of them wanting to grow moringa. And together they've reached over 60,000 children in 91 schools and have helped thousands of African people find economic and social self-sufficiency. It has been an amazing experience with her. She calls in and checks in at different times to find out what's happening in the moringa world and reports on the latest country that could be joining their group and gives me an update on the variety of people who have come through the course through her. There's also other projects. These are just a few, very few, because a lot of people are starting to work on projects. Organizations are sponsoring projects all over the world when they start to learn about moringa. And so we just have a few to show of different organizations. This African Moringa Global, they help farmers improve livelihood, achieve agricultural sustainability, providing a market for their quality product, and sourcing ethical, conscious farms whose workforce is largely women. And this we find throughout the African countries. And this is empowering them to have economic empowerment, eliminating poverty across the continent for women and children in the areas of malnutrition, but also they can start to create industry and be self-reliant in their endeavors. And some of the people who have come through are working in the area of human trafficking And so when we can train these women and children, it takes the pressure off of them for this financial industry in child trafficking and human trafficking, not only children. In the Philippines, they are transforming huge amounts of land for moringa. The government actually sponsors, you can get grants from the government to plant moringa. It's a cultural food called molungay, or also kalamungay. And they just are really committed to this plant. They know it, they love it. Their most common meal is chicken soup. I've received so many recipes for chicken soup from people who've come to either to my office or to our booth at the farmers market years ago. In Brazil, a lot of moringa has been planted there over the years. It grows really, really well. They've been teaching children and all families of all types to grow it for their health and nutrition, and it's just been a really amazing transformation in some of these areas where there's a lot of poverty and a lot of malnutrition. So they can grow it in their gardens and have it in their family meals. And also it raises their awareness. They're really focusing on teaching children in the school setting, and also distributing the moringa in their schools for them to take home to their families. Moringa for the world. So I also have, it's called Moringa for Peace. And that is for the purpose of these projects that we have seen. When you have healthy people, you can create a healthy planet, and a healthy planet leads to peace on earth. This is my great goal. This area here, which you see on this map, is where the moringa grows best. This is where there's the most amount of malnutrition, and you can see it's almost identical. So in the areas with the highest amount of nutrition, it's also the best climate for growing moringa. And it's also where people grow it, need it the most. So when we work in those areas, we are working in those really sensitive places. Sometimes there are political and economic systems there that really prohibit people from accessing it. So, and sometimes it's an outside source that's creating the pressure that keeps people in this chronic malnutrition. And so working in these areas it's really important. It's also important to be sensitive to the cultures where you're in. This map was very similar to the maps we just saw where moringa grows best and when there's the most amount of malnutrition. And this is a map that shows the climate catastrophes that are occurring the most on the planet. And as I mentioned before, I talked about the moringa survival kits. So when we work in those same areas, we're also impacting the areas where the climate is affecting farms. And so we can cover many issues when we work in those areas. So as I mentioned, one of the students is working on climate resiliency. And this is something that we could promote all throughout those areas that you see on this map. Moringa can also clean our air. It sequesters carbon like any tree. And you can see in this chart, I'll just go to the bottom one, you can take your time and look at this. But one family household just exhaling, we exhale CO2, right? Just a family, it would require 460 Japanese cedar trees, which take 50 years to grow, to absorb that, or it could take 26 moringa trees, which take 2 years to grow. So again, in those areas, we could have moringa lungs, the lungs of the planet that are breathing the air, creating the air that we breathe, but also absorbing carbon. The best place to sequester carbon is in the soil, and so all of our work with soil biology is also bringing us to that same goal of taking that CO2 out of the environment, out of our air. Solution is in our hands. So by participating in this and becoming educated about moringa and what moringa is possible to do. It's quite overwhelming sometimes when you think of it. And this is a presentation you can go back and look at over and over and just let it spark an interest and spark joy, and find those two things together. There is a step for you when those two parts come together. So we will be looking for what that can be for you. You might already have an idea, you might already have a project. You might just have an idea or a wish that you want to discover. And that's what we will be doing for the next 4 weeks. We will be doing that one-on-one. We'll do that in groups. You'll meet your other students, the members of your class, and we will find that together. These are different ways you can help. So share this information with key decision makers in your country, promote field studies and clinical studies in your country, share your findings with the rest of the world. It's a very important feedback loop, so we know, what's happening in the world. Create a Moringa outreach action, which is the purpose of this certification. Once you have completed that, which will impact your local community. Join the Moringa Intentional Group to connect to others who are working to expand Moringa in the world. So that we will talk more about the Moringa Intentional Group and what we do in there. Welcome to the wonderful Worldwide Moringa Movement.